And good afternoon, Pittsburgh Steelers fans. Welcome to another episode of Steelers Brunch with Tony. I'm your host, as always, Tony Defeo, and thank you for joining me on this bittersweet Saturday afternoon. It's nice outside, nice and cool and crisp. So that's the sweet part, and the Steelers are 3-0, and that's another sweet, delicious part, especially after last year and the year before that, when they were, 2-1, 1-2, it doesn't matter. Oh no, they were 0-3 last year. 1-1 the year, or 1-1 the year before. So this is much better. Of course, the bitter part is no game this week because several Titans players and their coaching staff, people in their traveling party, they tested positive for COVID-19, so there will not be a 3-0 versus 3-0 matchup this week. So that's unfortunate. So it is bittersweet. So I'll get into that a little bit later, and I have a lot of things I want to talk about. But first, I just want to encourage you, as always, to please subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we bring you several podcasts, sometimes several a day. There's a Steelers preview, Steelers hangover, the live mic with Michael Beck. Actually, that's just the audio platform. There's Let's Ride. That's another audio. There's the retro show. That's another audio only. But as far as the stuff you can catch on both audio and YouTube, there's this show. There's I mentioned the hangover. That's the day after every Steelers game with Brian Anthony Davis and myself. There is the Scobro show with co-editor Dave Schofield and his brother Rich. There's Know Your Enemy, a great show with deputy editor Michael Beck and Jeffrey Benedict, and they always have a journalist that covers the Steelers opponent that week. Last week it was the Tennessee Titans, and that was a great show as always. A lot of great insight. So please subscribe and check us out on YouTube and on any podcasting platform. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find us. And of course, check out Behind the Steel Curtain, the website, where we bring you articles, countless articles each and every day. There's commentary, there's news, transactions, injury updates, Titans players coming down with COVID updates. It seems to be never ending. I think a few more tested positive today. So as we like to say, Behind the Steel Curtain is your one-stop shop for all your Steelers needs. And welcome to everybody in the live chat. There's Ryan O'Toole, always a favorite. Dean McCrae, that's a new one. Sean Manahan. Who else we have here? Thaddeus Kennedy. Ezra. Dave Shipley, the legend Dave. I'm sure my friend Terry is lurking out there somewhere. Nicholas Morris. So welcome aboard, and I hope I can give you a great show today. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is last week's game between the Steelers and Texans at Heinz Field. The Steelers won 28-21 to improve to 3-0 on the year. And in many ways, I thought it was their best game of the year. I think it was certainly their best offensive performance of the year. I think they had 390 yards, 387 total yards on offense. So it wasn't an offensive explosion by any stretch of the imagination, but I think as far as consistency from beginning to end, I think it was their best performance. I thought Ben Roethlisberger was fairly efficient. Still pretty inaccurate on the deep ball, and that's a slight concern. But like I talked about last Monday with Brian on the Steelers hangover, I'd be more concerned if he couldn't even throw a deep ball right now. If he was coming up short on a deep ball instead of overthrowing his receivers. That seems to be the problem with Ben early on with the deep passes. He seems to be overthrowing the receivers, and I think that's actually a pretty good sign. It shows you that his arm is feeling just fine. His elbow is feeling 100%. He just has to work on his accuracy a little bit. And for a guy who is now the longest tenured Steeler and a legend and a multi-time Super Bowl winner and a future Hall of Famer. I have no doubt that he will get that right eventually. So I thought I thought he looked great overall. I thought he distributed the football around rather nicely. Eric Ebron led the way with 5 catches, but he still managed to throw for 237 yards. So if you can distribute the football like that, and still, what did he have? Two touchdown passes, I think. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I think he had 2. So if you can distribute the football and still put up 200 plus yards and 28 points, I think that's all you can ask for. And I thought the running game looked spectacular. I thought that James Conner looked as good as he has all season, as good as he has since maybe that Miami game last year on was it Monday Night Football. I thought it was his best game in quite some time. I thought he looked explosive. He ran hard, and shame on me for doubting him after week 1, but he's clearly the Steelers' top dog at running back right now. But some other guys got in the act, namely rookie Anthony McFarland. He only had 42 yards, but he also only had 6 carries, so he averaged 7 yards a carry. And I thought he looked explosive, and I thought it was a nice little preview of what he could be for that offense. A nice change of pace, because Connor and Benny Snell are essentially the same kind of running back as I mentioned before. I think they're both kind of downhill runners, shifty, tough runners, hard-nosed runners, whereas McFarland's that sort of breakaway threat, right? Yeah, Willie Parker, that kind of running back who can take it the distance at any moment and from any distance. I mean, he has the kind of speed that can go 80, 90 yards like a Willie Parker. So that was quite encouraging. I think we've had a nice little what am I trying to say? We had a nice little beginning of the year for the Steelers rookie draft class. Obviously, we know what Chase Claypool has been able to bring over the first 3 weeks, as far as the deep threat, the nice combat catch on the sideline. He kind of put the game away last week with the little bubble screen, I guess it was, the little quick screen pass at the end of the game, and he got the first down. He fumbled. Thankfully, it went out of bounds, so that could have been a bit of an ode to Xavier Grimble from a couple years ago. But it rolled out of bounds, and the Steelers were able to run out the clock. So some key, and then of course Kevin Dotson had a great game in week 2, filling in for David DeCastro as a emergency starter, basically, because DeCastro was injured in training camp, and Stefan Wisniewski, the veteran backup, he was injured in week 1, and he's on IR right now. So I thought Kevin Dotson had a great game, and Anthony McFarland did well, and Alex Highsmith, the 3rd round pick, has shown some flashes here and there in special teams and filling in for Bud Dupree and TJ Watt. So I thought the rookies looked great, and as far as some key points in the game, I thought the interception by Mike Hilton early in the 4th quarter, I thought that was huge. The Steelers were trailing by 1, and it looked like the Texans had a chance to put some more points on the board. But Hilton intercepted that pass, and the Steelers, to their credit, they answered and drove right down the field and scored the go-ahead and winning points on the James Conner touchdown run with 6.5 minutes to go. I thought that was huge, and I thought once right after that, the Steelers forced a punt. They forced the Texans to punt, and the Steelers ran out the clock. And I thought the key play on that drive was the quick little hitter to James Washington when they went for it on 4th and 1. I think they were at the 35, so they were kind of in no man's land. You really couldn't attempt a field goal right there, otherwise you would give the Texans great field position. And a punt there probably would have only netted you 15 yards. It would have been a tough ask for Dustin Colquitt to do a coffin corner from about 35 yards away. So they were kind of in no man's land. So going for it was the right move, and it was a key moment when Washington picked up that first down. So I'm trying to check out the live chat. That's why I sound a little bit distracted, because I know there's some breaking news, and that breaking news is Cam Newton. I read this right before I went online to do the show. Cam Newton tested positive. The Patriots' new quarterback, the veteran quarterback, formerly of the Panthers, he tested positive for COVID, and now that means that the Patriots-Chiefs game will likely be postponed. So more drama as far as that goes. And I guess in a way, it's kind of amazing that the NFL made it almost a month without any positive tests. But now here we are. The Steelers-Titans game has been postponed till later in the year, and who knows what they're going to do with the Patriots and the Chiefs. So that's why if you want to know why I was kind of distracted, I was trying to pay attention to live chat. Probably not a great idea to do on a solo show, is pay attention to live chat and remember your talking points. So anyway, as far as more on that later, I'm gonna touch on all that stuff later, but I just want to continue on with my analysis of the Steelers and Texans game. And the defense, it didn't look so hot in the first half. It yielded over 200 yards and 21 points, 3 touchdowns. Deshaun Watson, the Texans quarterback, looked great. I mean, he looked fantastic. He was constantly finding the soft spots in the Steelers secondary, the likes of Will Fuller. And I talked about this last week. They have a nice set of veteran receivers, the Texans do. Will Fuller, Randall Cobb, Brandon Cooks, and that was a little bit, I guess that was a little bit worrisome, but the Texans are a good team. Excuse me. They're, I thought they would give the Steelers a good game, because they had to start the season playing against arguably the two best teams in the NFL, and the Chiefs to open the year, and then the Ravens. So, that was a tough task. It's like, if you want to equate it to college football, it's like the Texans came into the year ranked in the top 10 or top 15, and they had to, and there were some big things expected from them, and they had to immediately open up against the top 2 teams in the country. So I didn't think that they were going to come in here and into Heinz Field last week and just roll over and play dead for the Steelers. I thought it would be a great game, and it really was. But as far as the Steelers defense, you have to give them a lot of credit for adjusting in the second half. To go from, I think the Texans had 209 yards in the first half and 3 touchdowns, and 51 total yards in the second half, and obviously 0 points. And once the Steelers got up late in the fourth quarter, it felt like, even though they were only up by a touchdown after Connor had the score, and then then Ben hit Juju Smith-Schuster on the 2-point conversion, they were up by a touchdown. But it felt like they were up by so much more than that, because the defense had dominated so much in the second half. And when all was said and done, Deshaun Watson, who was obviously very elusive, and he doesn't just like to take off and run. He's like another Ben Roethlisberger. He likes to escape and look downfield for open receivers. So that's not a very, and it's not an enviable task to keep him in check. So to sack him 5 times and to pressure him so many times, and the Steelers finished with 12 quarterback hits 1 week after getting 19 against the Broncos. I mean, my goodness, could you imagine having to prepare for that defense? I mean, you're going to be sore if you're a quarterback having to prepare. Imagine what Ryan Tannehill, who is not nearly as elusive as Deshaun Watson, was initially thinking as he had to prepare for the Steelers early last week. He knew he was going to be in some pain, and I guess fortunately for him, his painful post-Steelers week will take place at the end of October, because that game has been rescheduled for October 25th. But it's just amazing how this Steelers defense just continues to bring the pressure week after week, and going on a half decade now of excellence. I mean, they struggled for years getting after the quarterback. Once that defense, the legendary defense of Dick LeBeau, once that started to get old and slow, and it's over, to quote Warren Sapp, they struggled for years to put any pressure on the quarterback. But bringing in so many great athletes over the years, from Bud Dupree to Stephen Tuitt, obviously Cam Hayward, and now T.J. Watt, Vince Williams, and a change of philosophy, as I mentioned already in a previous show, a change of philosophy and basically weaponizing the defensive ends. Before the old Steelers defense, the defensive ends, and their responsibility was mainly to occupy as many blockers as possible and to free up the linebackers. Well, now they're Keith Butler came in and sort of took the handcuffs off of them, and they let them. He let them get after the passer, and now, as you see, they could bring pressure from everywhere, from the defensive line, from the linebackers, and of course from the likes of Mike Hilton, who's probably the best blitzing defensive back in the National Football League right now. So it's just amazing that this defense continues to bring pressure, and I would not want to face this defense. I mean, I realize you can get some points against anybody in today's NFL. It's just how it is. It's hard to shut a team down for 4 quarters, but I certainly want to face that pass rush if I'm an opposing quarterback. I don't care who I am. If it's Cam Newton or Tom Brady, I would not want to face that pass rush, because you're gonna be feeling it the next day. That's for sure. So that's pretty much all I have to say about that game, and I just want to talk about some individual parts of that game, some individual aspects of that game, and starting with the receiving core. I think the question coming into the season was, did the Steelers have a number 1 receiver? And I'm not so sure after 3 weeks if they truly do. A true number 1 receiver. Certainly not anybody who approaches the talent and the production of a Antonio Brown, right? I don't think they have that guy, at least not yet. I mean, maybe somebody develops into that. I think at the moment, Juju Smith-Schuster is the closest they have to that. But what I like about them this year is you have Juju Smith-Schuster leads the team in both receptions with 17 and receiving yards with 160. But directly right behind him is Diontae Johnson, the second-year receiver. He has 14 receptions for 149 yards. And in the middle is Chase Claypool. I don't remember how many catches he has. I think he has 6 or 8. Forgive me for not knowing that, but he has 151 receiving yards. And of course, he had that big score in week 2, the 84-yarder. He's quickly developed into a deep threat. Obviously, he had that 84-yarder against the Broncos, and then last week he drew a pass interference on a deep throw. It didn't lead to a touchdown, but it led to a field goal. But he didn't make the catch on that play, obviously. But what's the difference? A 40-yard catch or a 40-yard pass interference call? It's the same thing essentially. So. I like the way Ben is distributing the wealth. Johnson leads the way with 25 targets, and Juju is second with 19. And then it just kind of goes on down the line from there. Eric Ebron is now getting more and more involved. You saw that spectacular athletic touchdown he had early in the game last week, the spinning catch in the corner of the end zone. I think that's what makes him such a great weapon. He's not quite a traditional tight end, and he's not quite a receiver. He's somewhere in between, and that's a great weapon to have. And even Vance McDonald got into the act last week. He looked a little bit like Mark Bavaro on some of those catches at the end of the game, bowling people over. We haven't really seen that out of him since the stiff arm from hell in 2018 on Monday Night Football. So it was nice to see McDonald getting in the act. And the great thing about what Ben's been able to do so far through 3 games is he's been incredibly productive. He had 229 yards the first game, 301 or 311 the second game, and 237 last week. And he has 7 touchdowns and only 1 interception. That's incredible production through 3 weeks. But because he's been distributing the football around so much, and because no receivers really had a huge game yet. It just doesn't feel like it, and I think that's great. I think he's looking for the open man. He's not worried about trying to get the ball to AB like he was before. He kind of alluded to that in his talk with the media the other day about how, he doesn't really have the pressure of trying to get the ball to any one particular receiver. Now he's just looking for the open man. 2 years ago, he threw 16 picks, and 9 or 10 of them were when he was trying to hit Antonio Brown. I applaud the kind of career that Antonio Brown had when he was here. I thought he was excellent. I think in many ways, he was the greatest receiver the Steelers have ever had. But he was a diva. He was a classic diva receiver, and he was always in Ben's ear or the coach's ear yapping about how he was open. And a diva receiver, whether it's Terrell Owens, Randy Moss, you name them, they always think they're open. Even when they're not open, they think they can get open on the very next play. So that had to be kind of exhausting and a lot of pressure to get him the ball all the time. And he's not feeling that this year, I don't think, at least not yet. So I like the Steelers receiving core. It's deep, and you kind of get it's kind of like a platoon situation. I think Juju's the go-to guy that Antonio Brown was, and I think Diontae Johnson's the volume guy in a lot of ways that Antonio Brown was. Like Antonio Brown was like he was Mr. Everything. He was the go-to guy. He was the volume guy. He was the guy that they ran the offense through, the passing game through. Whereas now Ben has several receivers who can be that guy, and I think that's a valuable thing for this season moving forward. So that's that topic. So on to my next one. And the next thing I want to talk about is Chuks Okorafor, the third-year right tackle, the guy who just barely lost out to Zach Banner for the right tackle spot in training camp. That became his job permanently by the end of the first game because Banner suffered a season-ending ACL tear, and Okorafor's looked great. I mean, Kevin Dodson was fantastic, obviously, in his lone start, but Chuks Okorafor has just been fantastic. He has 6 starts, and you really haven't heard anything negative about any of his starts. And last week he was taking on maybe not the player he used to be, but still one of the best defensive players in the NFL, and that's J.J. Watt, TJ's brother. And I was looking at the stats. I wonder, brush up on all the stats before I came on the air, and J.J. Watt had 0 quarterback hits. And I realized he probably didn't always line up against Okorafor. J.J. Watt's one of those guys who, like Aaron Donald, who can line up anywhere he wants. But regardless, I'm sure he had a lot of work against Okorafor, and he had 0 pressures on the quarterback. And I think that speaks well of Okorafor and his talent, but that also says a lot about Sean Surratt, the offensive line coach, and how he's been able to coach these guys up. Obviously, a player like Okorafor, he does have a bit of a pedigree. He was a 3rd-round pick, and a lot of people liked him coming out of college. A lot of people thought he had the ability to be a great pass protector. So you have to give him the credit for developing, but you also have to hey, if you're going to criticize the coaching when the line plays poorly, then you have to applaud the coaching when these young players are seemingly improving from year to year. And I think we've seen a lot of improvement from Banner and Okorafor from last year to this year. And everybody's excited about Dotson and what he can bring. And so just a shout out to Chuks for a job well done last week. And what else do I have here? Excuse me while I check over my notes. Now we're on to the bye. And just like everybody else, I was disappointed when it was officially announced that the Steelers Titans game was going to be postponed. Nobody knew initially when when that game would be made up, but it seemed logical to make it up during the Steelers bye week and the Titans, to sort of shuffle everybody's bye weeks and have the Steelers and the Titans take a bye this week and then play that game at a later date. That's the most logical, sound way to do that. And I realize it's not necessarily fair to the Steelers that they have to take their bye right now through no fault of their own. But hey, I mean, these are unprecedented times, right? I'm not breaking any ground by saying that, but 100 years from now, they're going to be reading about us in history books. They're going to be seeing us like arguing with each other in Walmart. It's just a crazy time that we're probably never going to see again. So the NFL, I think people were saying, a lot of people wanted the Titans to forfeit, but you really can't do that, in my opinion. I think you have to protect the integrity of the game, and you certainly don't want to be awarding teams victories or punishing teams with losses if you can find another way to make the game up. And if there's an opening in the schedule later in the year to do that, then you have to do that. And then if there's another problem that arises, then you deal with that when you can. And I didn't really think about this initially, but like people like Brian Anthony Davis have said, they can push games back at the end of the year. There's no law that says that they can't push the playoffs back a couple weeks or even into March. The NHL did it, the NBA did it, Major League Baseball had to do it. So who says the NFL can't do that, right? And I think the great thing about all this, I mean, it's not great if you're a season ticket holder, but I guess a great thing for times like these is that there aren't really fans allowed to attend games. I mean, some teams are allowing fans to attend games, but overall, fans, you're playing an empty stadium. So, for example, if there's like a scheduling conflict in February with whatever Nissan Stadium in Tennessee, if there's a conflict there where some other thing's scheduled, well, you can play the game at Heinz Field if you had to, or you could play it somewhere else. If there's like a game you have to make up later in the year, if you have to make up a game between the Steelers and the Ravens, if you have to make it up in early January, you can maybe switch. You could have the Ravens come to Heinz Field again. Would that be necessarily fair to the Ravens? No, but without fans in the stands, I don't think it really matters all that much. And it's not like it would be a horrible long trip for the Ravens to go from Baltimore to Pittsburgh and play a game. So, or you can just have both teams play in a neutral site if you had to make up a game. And that's the same thing with the playoffs. With only one bye and no fans in the stands this year, does it matter if 7 plays at 2 or 2 plays at 7? Yes, it matters because 2 would have to travel to 7. But again, these are crazy times and times that we're never going to live through again. So I think the NFL is doing a good job. And back to the forfeit part of it, if you're crying and moaning and demanding that the Titans forfeit, well, what happens later in the year if the Steelers have a problem? If they have several players that test positive, are you going to want them to forfeit? No, because that wouldn't be fair. You could do what I just said. You could push some things back after the season and make up those games. I think that's what you have to do. If you can do it, that's how you have to do it. So, I get that everybody wanted to watch that game this week. I certainly did. 3-0 versus 3-0, but these are unprecedented times, to repeat myself, and I think the NFL is for its first crisis. I think it handled it as well as it could. And the encouraging part, if you're worried about a future outbreak, is there were plans for the Steelers and Texans to play the Titans to play on Monday or Tuesday night, but the Titans players just kept testing positive. So, I mean, they had no choice but to canceled a game for the safety of both teams. Now, if this happened, on Wednesday like it did, and there were no other positives from Wednesday through today, for example, then, I think that they certainly would have played on Monday or Tuesday. And would it have been fair to the Titans that they wouldn't have been able to practice? Maybe not, but hey, again, these are strange times, and there's only so much you can do in football as far as being able to make games up. As I mentioned, yeah, you could push some weeks back at the end of the year, but you can't do that for an infinite amount of time. So if the Titans would have had to play on virtually zero practice, then that's just how it would have had to go, and that's how it's going to have to go for any future COVID crisis that pops up. So that's pretty much all I have to have for today, and now I'll open things up to some questions. So let's see what we have here. Here's a comment from Ezra that I echo. Wait a minute. I always do this. Sorry. I'm always a step behind with the comment. It is from Dallas Quinley. I'll read that comment instead. If these were injuries, the game would have to be played. Yeah, injuries, but you can't pass an injury from one person to another. But you can pass a virus from one person to another. So I understand where the NFL is coming from with the precautions they're taking, because you have to protect the safety of not just of both teams. And if even one Titans player played in Sunday's game against the Steelers with that virus, and it wasn't detected via testing, then that could have compromised the Steelers, and they would have had to have a future game canceled, or who knows what would have happened. So it's not exactly like an injury. If you're talking about one or two players, then yeah, that's you could treat it like an injury then, provided there are no other positive tests that pop up through the course of the week. And that's why they expanded the practice squad. That's why they did that. But when you have so many players test positive, I forget the number now, but I think it's close to a dozen. When you have that many players test positive, and there's no stop, there's no break in the positives, and they just keep coming day after day after day, you have no choice but to postpone that game, just for the safety of the players. Here's one from Nathan Zarati. Patriots and Chiefs got postponed to Monday or Tuesday because of positive tests on both teams. Well, I like that. I like the fact that they decided for now to postpone the game to Monday or Tuesday. That means, well, obviously both teams have had a full week of practice, so they're prepared. So what that tells me is they're waiting for more tests to come in, and provided that there are no more positives, then they're going to move forward. Cam Newton, who's Patriots probably their most important player right now, since he's their quarterback and he's a veteran quarterback of some accomplishment, he's going to have to sit out. That's just how it is. But they're going to play the game. So that, to me, that tells me that the reason why the NFL did what it did with the Titans and the Steelers is not necessarily because they're afraid to play on Monday or Tuesday. It's because just too many players kept testing positive. So I think if there's another scenario, and it's another encouraging thing that they're doing this, because here we are on Saturday, and Newton, we're just finding this out. So that tells me that even if there's a positive test 2 or 3 days before a game is scheduled to play, they can still theoretically get that game in. So I think that's encouraging that they're going to play. Here's one from Ryan O'Toole. Oh gosh, sorry, I'm having a meltdown on air because I can't get these. Here's a $5 super chat question from Dave Shipley. Is Bad doing a Mr. 2 a.m. this week? Any change in the BTSC schedule? Well, I think there was going to be a change in the schedule when it was first being reported that the game would be played on at Monday or on Monday at 5, but now with the game being postponed until October 25th, I think it's going to be the regularly scheduled programming. So I'm assuming there's going to be a Mr. 2 a.m. And all the other podcasts are going to go on as per usual. So what else we have here? Here's a self-indulgent plug to soothe my ego, to massage my ego from Ryan O'Toole. Thank you, Ryan. Check out Tony's article on the site about the virus bye week. Great article. Thank you. To be honest with you about that article, I never even considered the disadvantage of having a bye in week 4 until people started bringing it up, because the NFL existed for years without any regular season buys, and everybody got along just fine. And obviously, I'm not that cold-hearted. I realize that we all are more aware of the physical toll that football takes on a player's body and how it affects his life in latter years of his life. So I realize that's more of a thing now. But I think that's not really what people are worried about. I think people are really worried about how it could hurt the Steelers' Super Bowl chances if they have to play 13 straight weeks heading into the playoffs. But I don't think there's really a whole lot of data that backs that up. To be honest with you, I don't think that it's that much of a disadvantage. I think the biggest disadvantage to a team for the playoffs is not having to play a bunch of games in a row. I think it's injuries. So I think as long as the Steelers are injury free heading into the playoffs, that's the biggest and most important thing. And you can spin this kind of stuff any way you want. I mean, I've seen people complain about a team having a bye into the divisional round. They're going to be rusty. I've seen people complain about teams resting players at the end of the year if they have everything locked up, because that's 2 weeks off for some of these guys, or 3 weeks off, I guess. So they're going to be rusty. And I've seen people complain about a team not having enough rest and playing on a Sunday and then having to play on Thursday. And then when they play on Thursday, and then they're off to the following Sunday, 10 days, people think, oh, they're going to be rusty. So you can spin this stuff any way you want. But ultimately, I don't think it really matters all that much. As long as the Steelers are healthy and playing at their best thing into the playoffs, I don't think it's going to hurt them to have to play 13 games in a row. Again, I think the NFL did as well as it could with this situation. And, I think at this point, people talk about, well, they should have had a plan in place. Well, what kind of plan could there be when you have a sport like football where you can only really play once a week? I think you have to just tell these players, be vigilant. That's a horrible grammar. Be vigilant and create your own virtual bubble, right? I mean, we heard news last week of the Raiders, the Las Vegas Raiders. They were photographed at a fundraiser. Jason Witten, who else? Derek Carr, a couple other guys. They were at a fundraiser with a bunch of people with no masks. That's the kind of stuff that just makes the NFL look bad, because I mean, that's how this disease is spread. That's how this virus is spread. And I don't know what happened with the Titans. I don't know who was ground zero for the outbreak with the Titans. It could have been an innocent thing. Bob Walk, he's the Pirates color analyst. Great, one of the best in the business. If you like the Pirates at all, I unfortunately do. I'm a diehard fan. But anyway, I think he got it. I think his wife got it back in the spring, and he said we did everything we could. We took all the precautions. We wore the masks. We socially distanced. We did the sanitizer, washed our hands, the whole 9 yards, and they still got it. So it could have been a very innocent thing. Maybe somebody went to the store and who knows? They touched something. Their kid could have brought it home from school. We'll never know. I mean, I'm sure that they're trying to do contact tracing right now to get to the bottom of it. But the bottom line is these players, again, and these coaches and everybody involved in the NFL, they have to be vigilant and careful, like the rest of society, and because we see what can happen. As I mentioned earlier in the summer, it can't be like baseball where you can just make up and play double headers. You have to. Who knows what's going to happen with all this? Maybe they can't maybe they can't create open weeks at the end of the year. We'll never know. You might have a scenario where some teams are playing 16 games and some teams finish with 15 games, and they have to go by winning percentage in order to determine who makes the playoffs. So anyway, that's pretty much all I have for today. And I want to thank you guys for participating. I realize it's a tough week because we had a great game to look forward to, and now that's been postponed. But before you know it, it's going to be next Sunday, and hopefully there will be no more COVID outbreaks, and the Steelers will be taking on the Eagles. And next Saturday at this time, I'll be talking to you about that game. So enjoy the rest of the weekend as much as you can, everybody, and you can still watch a lot of great football. Hopefully there will be no more COVID outbreaks, and they won't have to shut down the NFL for this weekend, because here we are now. 2 games are being postponed. At least one's postponed. The other one, for now, might be played on Monday or Tuesday. So hopefully we can have a lot of great NFL action this weekend. So everybody out there, you have a great weekend, and go Steelers.